The chaotic touch of harmony too, bonded by fire. By law-abiding pony. Chapter 1. Calm Days and Storm Clouds. Part 1 of 4. It was late into the evening as Alexia slouched at her computer desk. The darkened study was lit only by a single crystal that reacted to her mana to create a pale white light that barely went past the desk's sole occupant. It was joined by the glowing computer monitor, and the trace amount of light from the town below through an octagon window. The house the citizens of Trinity had gifted her with was hardly quiet. Yesterday marked the twins, Aurora Sky and Violet Spark, first birthday. The rest of the family was getting the two fillies, along with their half-brother Dusty Tinker, ready for bed so that the adults could hopefully get a full night's rest. As much as the Silver Alicorn wanted to be a part of that, she felt it was necessary to start something new, a journal. Her chair had an arching padded backrest to which she lounged in, with the keyboard laying across her hind legs and a forehoof resting on the keys. Her magic was ready to start typing once its master called for it, but at the moment she stared at the blinking black cursor at a loss on how to start. A glass of red wine sat in an aura of azure light, and a bottle sitting on the far side of the desk read Tour de Belfort 2010. It was a gift from President Fitzgerald, his way of ensuring a cordial friendship between the two of them. She didn't expect to receive another. Not because of declining relations between them, but of recent world events. With the twins having been weaned from nursing, the last brief feeding being 2 weeks ago, the mare was at last allowed to partake in Earth's favorite beverage, alcohol. Her mood was less than content at the topics she would transcript into data, and took a sip to try and raise them. The spicy aroma tingled in her nose as the fruity suppleness tantalized her senses. Nothing like a dry spell to make your first taste all the better. Her mood was improved, but only just. Without really knowing how to start, she simply began with what was on her mind. January 11, 2015. I'm not really supposed to keep a journal. CIA regulation sees it as a security risk and I can't say I disagree. So it is for that reason I'm probably just going to keep this computer cut off from the net or just format the hard drive later. But I feel that I have to have an unbiased confessor. Even if all the computer will ever say back is this silent, blinking cursor, ever hungry for words. Well, I guess I can start with the good. Spark and Sky are going strong and Tinker is a fun little guy. But I missed Spark and Sky's first words. I was so pissed because I was covering Kellerman's class on abjuration magic when they spoke. I did get to see them make their first steps, but in all honesty, a foal learning to walk isn't as big of an accomplishment for human babies learning to walk on 2 legs rather than our 4. But it was still a proud moment to witness. I'm glad to say my personal life for the past year has been more or less uneventful. At least in the grand scheme of things. After all the insanity with changing species, the ranch, Bowler, Section 9, and that last mission at Oppenheim. Blah. I really needed some peace, no. We needed some peace. Get a chance to have some normality in our lives. Crimson needed time to find a way to balance her own motherhood and keeping up her medical apprenticeship like I have with magic. Conrad's even had to limit his involvement with the weather company thanks to the heavy load Thompson's put on our training schedule. Thankfully Gil Highwind was more than capable of picking up the slack. Loki. Loki is the only pony I know who has magic I can't even fathom. I find it's best not to think of it too hard and just be glad she's on our side. I will say this though. She's taken a shine to Dusty that rivals Crimson. She gets along with Sky and Spark too, but the way that mare acts, you'd think Tinker was her kid. Trinity has been growing steadily and I would be remiss to forget that my work as a training instructor under Thompson has been rewarding. Even if this computer isn't connected to the net, I'm not going into any details here. But I can say that ponies are well on their way to showing the world that we can stand side by side with humanity outside of Trinity. As for the home front though, I did have to tell Julie to heavily scale back on what she presents to me to work with around town. It was impossible to juggle motherhood, work, and all of the political decisions East kept throwing my way. I get that she wants me to be active in the community for morale purposes, but I refuse to be one of those parents who is too busy to be a parent. Besides, East does a fine job, and her heart is in the right place. And if I'm going to be completely honest with myself, I don't want the life of a politician. As dangerous as it is, I'd prefer to stay on with the CIA. Let the Terrans decide policy for themselves and leave me to their defense. They need both in equal measure, and I'd rather let the public decide how they want to be governed. Trinity is doing what it does best, push boundaries. We've reached 7,000 people now. Alexia paused before retyping the last sentence. Our local population is at 7,000 Terrans now. I get the feeling they like that term, Terrans. There's been some rough spots, and growing pains, but nothing that I think will stymie our progress for long. I know other parts of the world are rather resistant to ponies. But I can at least say we're seeing more acceptance in a few countries outside of the States. Just last week, Germany started granting a few more civil rights to its equine population. It really only took a month after my first news conference before the last of the world's countries finally stopped lying to its people and admitted we ponies exist. Now if only acknowledgement and restoration of civil liberty meant the same thing, but alas it is not the case. Many countries out there were both shocked and appalled at how quickly Fitzgerald granted us freedoms after deeming us safe for social integration. He received a lot of flack for the decision, and some claimed it as political suicide. But I think it could have been worse if the siege on DC hadn't have taken a lot of the thunder out of the announcement. A good many like China, Russia, Ukraine, Spain, even Italy are still treating ponies as both threats and potential weapons. And as for our predominantly female population, I'm not going into the quagmire that started in certain areas of the world. But I will say this much about it, both the States and Canada have received a ton of pony immigrants. I think it's mostly because America's hat followed Fitzgerald's lead in opening the doors to ponies in the same week. Britain has too, as far as my clearance level tells me anyway, but they were a little late in ratifying our kind into their legislature because the press didn't let anyone know he was planning on bringing us into the light when he did. Alexia stopped typing to think, taking another sip of wine as she did. It was only then that she realized she was typing in Equish. She wasn't using the pony's alphabet, but typing it phonetically with the Latin one. It caught her off guard for a moment to realize that she was using it automatically. Well, if anything, it's just another layer of encryption. As much as I love seeing more of my people, they've proven to be rather overzealous at times. Especially immigrants from countries who don't see us as people. I'll be walking, flying, or doing something in town and a bunch of ponies will come up to me and beg for a moment of my time. If only to see me in person. It's really easy to tell they're foreigners. What with the accents, broken if not completely absent English, and most telling of all, almost none of them have cutie marks. But the scary ones are those suffering from soul rot. They'll be dragged or carried by their friends or family of either species to wherever I am and beg for me to heal them. I really don't have a problem with using my, I guess it would be proper to say alicorn magic, to heal them. But I found out fairly quickly that my alicorn soul-bridging magic only works on TV if the broadcast is live, so viral videos in intolerant nations don't work and any scheduled broadcasts are censored. That in of itself isn't what really scares me though, it's the reactions I receive when their loved ones regain their color and vitality. I feel like one of those televangelists claiming he can cure cancer by just faith and his touch alone. Personally, I couldn't care less what other people believe in religions that don't concern me, but sometimes it's really hard to keep them from putting me on the same pedestal as Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Elvis, or whoever other person people pray to. I had a nightmare once where I walked in on a church dedicated to me. The silver mare took a large swig of wine at the thought of it before continuing. Luckily, I've managed to avoid becoming the latest in a long line of messiahs. It really helps that I can fully explain how my magic works. The world has enough religions as it is. And to be perfectly honest, it's damn creepy to be worshipped like that. Hero and celebrity worship is bad enough, but I can tolerate that because us Americans love our celebrities. Especially in these days. But deity worship? You can forget it. Moving on. Toon let the glass rest on the desk as she pressed a hoof on her forehead. She exhaled slowly to release the tension the next topic brought up in her. Mayan. Just saying the name is grounds for a pay grade and security clearance reduction. But as of last month it's on everyone's lips in the agency thanks to a letter signed by what we believe to be the cult leader here in North America, Zadavek. It was delivered to the White House in person before the messenger shot himself. The contents are classified, but it was about as what you could expect. Threats against both the president and the American people in general along with promises to bring down the diseased temple that is the current administration. Thankfully, the top dogs of both intelligence agencies regarded the threat seriously as it basically pointed out that the attack on DC was only the beginning, saying that they had people placed in the highest levels of government. So, who do you think everyone turned to root out the moles? Section 9. Alexia refilled her glass as her mood went from sour to a touch of pride. I can't tell you how happy I was that my efforts with Thompson made Section 9's services in extremely high demand. All of it thanks to that little retrieval operation in Oppenheim. I'm still refining it, but I've almost perfected the divination array that can isolate Mayans from normal humans. The trick is locating the newly infected as quickly as possible. All it took was Thompson letting the brass know about my array and they practically threw themselves at our feet/hooves begging to place us in key major cities and transport hubs. Well, they did so with a lot more tact than that, but you get the idea. I didn't personally get involved in any of the sweep and clean operations that followed. It was all handled by my trainees. The first thing we did was silently sweep all intelligence and military agencies for moles like Whisker. We cleaned out over 2,000 cultists from the army alone and the rest of the branches in the space of a few months. Such a number is terrifying to say the least, and the Mayans didn't always go down easy or cleanly either. Plus they got smart fast. After we cleared the upper ranks of the military, FBI, and CIA, there was a sudden upswing in people going AWOL among the lower ranks. Yet all of that was before they found out how we were tracking them down. It was just outside Keesler AFB when it first started. A promising cadet of mine, Jake Palmer, was going to power the array when a sniper's bullet ended his life. Right outside the damn security gate. They never did find the bastard. But the assassination told us that it was the work of a professional, so we certainly have the cult's attention. Poor Jake left behind 2 mares and a foal. He was the first of 31 agents who died trying to uncover more Mayan cells in the past year. The Alicorn found it difficult to remain professionally detached. She turned to look at the family portrait that sat on the desk. It had been taken right after reuniting with her sister. It was backdropped by Elizabeth's boarding school. The herd had subconsciously made Alexia take the center of the photo with the twins held in her magic with the other ponies standing at her side. Elizabeth was a 17-year-old young woman who had shoulder-blade-length red hair and a fair complexion. She was thin as a rail thanks to her spending far too much time out on nature hikes, and not enough time studying. Much to her chagrin, that also nearly made her as flat-chested as Alexia. Toon's sister stood behind the Alicorn with a massive smile on her face. Alexia stared at the framed photo with a trace of a frown as Palmer stayed in her mind's eye. How long will it be, before that happens to one of us, she asked the air rhetorically. Thompson's being pushed to put us back in the field. She grabbed the picture in her magic to bring it over for closer inspection. Will it be me? She couldn't bear the thought of tempting fate with any of her herd mates. Will the cult even wait that long and instead come for us here? Do they even know Trinity is the source of the CIA's pony members? I have to assume they do. And if so, why haven't they moved against us? Toon's thoughts drifted to what Twilight told her in regards to Discord's warning. Lunacy. *. End of Part 1.